Talking about history, talking about history.
Oh, yeah. Talking about history. Talking about the history of Wrestlemania. And yeah, I am going to be talking like this the whole night because I got some tea that'll soothe my voice. That's better. Anyway, we're talking about favorite WrestleMania matches and moments because sometimes the moments are more special than the matches. Yeah. And I got an all-star panel here today. I want to first introduce new to the panel. We got Michael from Toy Habits. Nice to have you on here, Michael.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Got Jay Bartlett back. How you doing, Jay?
Thank you for having me, Macho Man. I appreciate it very much.
And we got another Can Foundation. Did we ever decide on like a Can Foundation hand signal? Like,
well, we're working on it. We're working on it.
Okay. Yeah. Rob from 3D Vintage Toys is back. Ooh, yeah. How you doing?
Hi, Michael. Great to be here.
And joining us for the first time. Well, I talked to you a while ago, didn't I, on Toy Guys Talking, Steve?
Yeah, we had. Yeah, it's been a while though. It's been a long time.
It's been a minute.
Been a long time. Been a long time. Been a lonely time.
Been a forever and a day. Yeah, good to talk to you again. Awesome, Steve Glosson.
Good to be back. Thanks for having me. Good to be with these guys. It's nice to meet new people. And you listen. I can talk some old school wrestling. So let's get in the ring. Let's do it.
We got to run in. This is like the Royal Rumble. 2 minutes are up. The newest entry is Bob. What are you, some kind of comedian?
I would have made an excellent stand-up comedian. Hey, how's it hanging, everybody?
Bob, how you doing? Good to see you.
Oh, good to see you, Crazy Cats. Good to meet some of you guys for the first time.
Hello, Bob. Hello.
Everybody meet Bob. He's literally a comedian. Bob, what's this I hear about you burning orphans and hating orphanages?
Oh, did you see that? Oh, goodness gracious.
Or did I get that backwards?
That's an inside joke. Oh, yeah, just, YouTube, toy drama, you know how it is. Everyone's always head-to-head, nose-to-nose, face-to-face, but that's what happens when the irresistible force meets the immovable object, toe-to-toe, off the hook, off the wall, off the chain. It's WrestleMania. It's stupendous. We're going to go bananas, Daddy.
What it is what it is.
And that's the tale of the tape, Gino.
And Jay, why don't you kick it off? What is it? What is your favorite WrestleMania match or moment?
Okay, I'm going to I was actually at WrestleMania 18 in Toronto.
Wow.
Good deal.
Hogan
versus Rock.
Yeah, and that's it, right? So for me, the big 80s were, of course, I think we're all around the same age. So the 80s were my jam. Fell off in the 90s with the DX stuff, and then kind of got back into it through the video games. No Mercy on the 64, all the great THQ games on the 64 brought me back, actually, into WWF. And so I got into that whole thing. Saw WrestleMania, and I loved seeing Hogan and Rock because it was a great match, but it was also the passing of the torch. And it was really cool because if anyone was going to accept it, I think Austin was great, but if anyone was going to accept it, I'm glad that The Rock did.
Mm-hmm.
And just to see Hogan and The Rock in the ring, like live, was insane. We were all on our chairs. I mean, I'm not the tallest of dudes, so but we were all on our chairs just freaking out.
You are a giant among men, brother. Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Macho King. That's it for sure, man.
No, the Kingdom of the Madness is cracked in half. Oh, the name is okay. You're right.
100%. It was The Rock versus Hogan. That's my favorite match of all time. I love it.
Hey, that's a great match for being intergenerational match. They try to do it all the time, but how often is an actual great, entertaining to watch match?
Super icons like that too. I mean, The Rock is larger than life. Hogan is larger than life. Like, and then the next match, remember after that, it was Triple H versus Jericho, and I was like,
they didn't have a chance. They didn't have a chance. But in terms of an intergenerational match, like we see it all the time, the veteran versus the young upstart, and the veteran hangs in there. You know, they do an okay job. But that was like match of the year. That was the level of energy in the crowd was insane.
Yeah. The crowd is what made that. Watching it on TV was just absolutely amazing. And I was watching with some younger people who weren't around for Hulkamania. And the whole build up, like they tried to make Hogan the heel. They tried to make him the bad guy. And as he came out, that crowd just would not let him be the bad guy. And so the turn at the end and going face and everything and doing the posing and all was just good night. But when I was a youth pastor at the time, and so the following week or two down the road, we had a trip together, and all the guys brought old T-shirts because after watching that match, they all wanted to rip their T-shirts off. That's what they were all about doing when we'd going down to the beach or something. Instead of, they just take an old T-shirt and Hogan it right off, because that was the impact on kids who did not grow up with Hulk Hogan. That was the impact of that match on them, is they were absolutely just taken with Hogan. They all knew The Rock, but to see Hogan do his thing was just, that was beyond anything I could have imagined. I can't imagine being there, dude. That place was nuts.
Yeah, it was insane. It's I've been to a few Raws. I've been to a couple Raws in town here, but to see WrestleMania, I got lucky. It was in Toronto, right? A couple hours away from Michael and myself. And to see it live was surreal. Absolutely surreal. I can't explain the experience I had.
Plus, Hogan was pretty much done at that point. He had run his course in WCW, and when they brought in the NWO into WWE, it was really played out. I remember going like, "Well, they're running on fumes." Yeah. So it was obligatory. We have to do Hogan versus someone big. Austin didn't want to. Austin just said, "No, thanks." Austin really remembers anyone who slighted him early on in his career. He never forgot Hogan, and he never forgot Jarrett. And when he actually got in a position of power, he went, I ain't doing that.
Wow.
But I remember Hogan basically resurrected his career that night with how he was in that match. He pulled it out of he's over, he's past his prime, and he got another good couple year run just based on that one night.
Was it the SmackDown the following week, or when
it was the next? Yeah, the following week in Montreal.
And just of course, SmackDown was taped, so they had to edit down the ovation that Hogan got coming out to the ring that night.
It was never ending. I want to give a shout out. I didn't do it at the beginning, but I want to give a shout out to the Children's Health Foundation. So any super chats you folks want to give tonight, they're going to the Children's Health Foundation. But full disclosure, YouTube keeps 30% of every super chat, whether it's just to some dude or whether it's to people who are raising funds for charitable events. YouTube gets a cut because, the ease of the donation system and all that, they get some of it. But if you want to make a direct donation, it's right there at the bottom of the screen, childhealth.ca/donation. You can make a direct donation there. I'll get 100% of your donation. So I just want to give a shout out to that amazing hospital and every healthcare worker out there that takes care of people who are in need. The comments are coming fast and furious on the side. Wish I could get to all of them, but thanks guys for watching along. Thanks for your comments.
Hello, Toy Source.
Yeah, Michael is here. We're going to wrestle in a salad steel cage later on for the undisputed World Heavyweight Intercontinental Championship. So Steve, what was your biggest WrestleMania moment?
Man, when you told me we were going to do this, I did what I always do, and I made a big list. So it's kind of hard to pick. Hogan Rock was definitely on my list. I think one of the greatest, moments and one of the most iconic moments of WrestleMania has to be WrestleMania 3. Hogan slamming Andre.
Yeah.
Now, that was the best match on the card. Everyone knows the best match on the card that night.
What would that be?
That'd be the Macho Man.
Yeah.
Versus Steamboat. But you listen, that crowd, the thing about WrestleMania 3 is everybody had a story going in. Every match had a purpose, and that crowd was hyped all day long in the Pontiac Dome. Or the Silver Dome, I guess is what they're calling it in Pontiac, Michigan, for what was going on. And so by the time you get to Hogan Andre and they're out there and of course the behind the scenes story is the cart wouldn't work to let Hogan ride out there. So he walks out, and it's the pointing and
he was copying Piper. He was copying Piper. Yeah. The cart broke down before Piper's match, and Piper was the one who went, to heck with it. I'm gonna run down the aisle there. And when he saw Piper do it, Hogan was like, well, I'm not being upstaged, brother.
Right. But the whole thing of just, you know, the way the match worked, where he tried to get him early and fell and hurt his back and worked the back the whole rest of the match until finally there at the end, just up and down. And look, I love it when people have to be the smartest person in the room, be like, well, you know, it wasn't technically the first time Hogan had slammed Andre. When he was wrestling as a heel, he slammed him. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. When we were kids, we did not know that. We just knew that here was this man who was apparently undefeated.
How could you? Right? There was no internet or anything. It was
Right.
just your
Right.
memory, pretty much.
That's a good example of how joy has died because of too much behind the scenes how the sausage is made.
And but when Hogan slammed him, I mean, that place erupted. I mean, everybody went nuts, and it was amazing to see. And then the fact that they kept it going, you know, between 3 and 4 with the fake referee and the bad call, and you led to the tournament in 4, which led to the superpowers forming, which led to the, you know, it was just, look, WrestleMania 3 is just if WrestleMania was the spark, WrestleMania 3 was the dynamite that just blew everything up. And that slam was the slam heard around the world.
Yeah.
Can I add something?
Go ahead.
To the body slam heard around the world. WWE traditionally is not great with history. Like if it happened more than 6 months ago, it never happened.
Right.
But to this day, if you watch the current edition, whatever it is, a Monday Night Raw or SmackDown, every Raw and SmackDown up until this week has actually opened with Hulk Hogan slamming Andre the Giant.
Yeah.
Is it
picture up top? It's the first thing they show in the whole. Here's Trish Stratus, here's Roddy Piper, here's Ric Flair, whoever. But they always and there's no other wrestling moves in that whole intro. It's in John Cena's soothing voice, which is very nice. And
well, the champ is here.
I can't see him, but I can hear him.
Well, then that's why they didn't bother. Like, you're not going to be able to do that. But that's how much that moment still needs.
Is it? And we'll continue favorite matches, but you bring up a good point, Bob. Is it the most iconic moment of all of them? The build and the actual payoff that you know lived up to the build.
I think it is.
Mm-hmm. You know, there are going to be people who want to say it's stuff with the Undertaker and Shawn Michaels or the ladder match kind of thing would be iconic moments, but I don't know that in all these years, nearly 40 years of WrestleMania, that there's a moment that is more replayed and seen and thought of when you think of WrestleMania. I really don't. It's just there are better matches, you know. There are much better matches, but that moment of the slam is just. If
that's how they open their show, then that's definitely the most iconic moment.
Right.
If that's the first thing you see, then absolutely.
It's such a surreal moment. It looks like a CGI effect these days. It doesn't look humanly possible that a guy as big as Hogan is, it doesn't look like he should be able to do that because he didn't Luger Yoko slam him. He got him up there. He rotated him and he drilled him.
Yeah, it was, you know, and at the beginning of the match, the stare down and everything they were doing, the build up to that match, you know, the ripping the cross off and the you're bleeding, you know, all that stuff, and then of course, you know, Gorilla Monsoon with the call, the irresistible force meeting the immovable object. He would try that again and again, but it was never more true than when Hulkamania ran into Andre the Giant. And golly, it just I get excited just talking about it because of just, you know, that's that moment that captured everyone's imagination that man, it's the stuff that the joy of wrestling really is made of, the overcoming all odds and you know, Hogan did it better than anyone else.
Yeah. I was so emotionally invested in that storyline back in the day, and I didn't know it was a storyline. I mean, I was a kid. I thought it was real. And so when they met,
still real to me, damn it.
In Piper's Pit,
I can see that.
It's not real.
Seeing that friendship break up I feel like I'm not as emotionally invested in all of the storylines except for the storylines that happened when I was a kid.
Yep.
They just don't do them right anymore.
Well, there's a reason for that. You know, it comes down to, it's like Michael said, there's the whole behind the scenes thing and the you know, obviously there comes a point where you do lose your innocence with the secrets of wrestling and everything as you begin to realize. But look, the minute Andre came out with Bobby Heenan, You know, Bobby Heenan was the devil. He was the epitome of evil in WWF, and so that's all Andre had to do was align himself with Bobby Heenan. He never had to say another word. He never had to. All he had to do was just be there with Bobby Heenan as his mouthpiece, and it was, you know, you're like, oh my gosh, the whole world has turned upside down. And Hogan was brokenhearted. Like, look, you Suburban Commando, Anna with muscles, you know, you do whatever you want. But in those moments, Hogan knew how to act in the moment of wrestling, in a wrestling angle, in a wrestling storyline. He knew that it needed that over-the-top thing. And as a kid, I just bought it. I bought this broken-hearted man whose best friend had turned on him, you know.
I'm going to go watch it right now. I got to go, guys, because this is...
Well, I did a commentary on it not long ago with my good brother Slick from Halstead Street, Shawn Fuster, and we really analyzed that, and watching it together, we were blown away at the mastery. And it's not the best match of the night. A lot of people will agree that, but that doesn't mean there isn't a high level of mastery. And Hogan's the one that carries the match. You wouldn't think he's the guy who's carrying somebody to a great match, but he did it with Warrior and he did it with Andre that night. And he really is at his absolute best in that match. The really tiny nuances, like when he's in the bear hug for a long time, because, you know, behind the scenes type of stuff, Andre needs a breather. But when he's blasting out of it, trying to escape, Andre is still hanging on to the tights. That little touch that I've never noticed before, and getting to watch it through with Slick and analyze it, you know, these little touches, like I'm hanging on literally by my fingertips onto this hold. You don't really, there's not the time or patience to do that stuff these days anymore.
Wow. Yeah.
And I want to also say happy birthday to Slick. It's his birthday today. And I wanted to throw out his biggest, greatest WrestleMania match, sentimental value for him. It's Hulk Hogan versus Sergeant Slaughter. So toy fans know all about the Sarge and that dark period with the Sarge when he didn't actually turn code. He was undercover. He was just too convincing. He got lost. He lost the plot. But yeah, that's Slick's favorite match right there. Hogan.
I was there live.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's
It was yeah, it was funny. My dad got me tickets and we went there and we were in the nosebleed seats, but I didn't care. Like I just wanted to be there, and that's where the Taker's streak started. And you had the retirement match with the Macho Man and Ultimate Warrior, and yeah, I mean the culmination and the build up just to Sergeant Slaughter and Hulk Hogan was pretty cool. So I mean, it was just amazing. That was my first like huge wrestling, you know, type show, because I've been to house shows before, but you know, they weren't televised and they were just kind of making their rounds in the cities back then. Yeah. But it was pretty cool.
What was your favorite WrestleMania match or moment, Michael?
So geez, I'm like others, I have a very long list, but I feel like the Bret Hart versus Stone Cold Steve Austin from WrestleMania 13, I thought was a beautiful, fantastic build. You had Hart as a babyface, you had Stone Cold as a heel, and I think out of the things that came out of '97, I thought that was the best thing that came out of that year. You know, it was a submission match, so they were smashing each other with chairs, they were brawling outside the ring. Bret Hart had Austin cinched up in a figure four around the ring post at one point, and just that image of Austin in the sharpshooter with all that blood pouring out of his face was just iconic. He did not submit, and I don't know if this was storyline or not, if we actually passed out, but I mean it was good TV.
I want to believe
he actually passed out. Yeah. Let's just say that. Let's just go with that.
Yeah.
The double.
It's the double turn. You know, it's you know, Hart walking out to boos and Stone Cold walking out to cheers. It was a fabulous, and I don't think they have pulled that off like that ever again. Not
before, not since. And they'll be talking about it probably in 50 years. Double turn. Well, it was done in 97. Yeah, good luck.
Yeah. You used the term again, iconic. That image of Austin in the sharpshooter, just the crimson mask covering his face, and yeah, that's another one of those just
dripping
iconic
the blood.
WrestleMania moments. Love it.
Here's the big thing about that moment. Okay, there's Flair, his technique of moving the head around and guys, slamming the mat before that was a tap out and doing a lot of active selling. Austin was doing that too, but the iconic actual moment that's on all the posters and t-shirts is him just raising his head and yelling, not doing anything. Don't do anything. Just it's trickling down, and he's not overselling.
Right.
And that's what made him one of the all-time greats.
It's like, how can you function with all, like, so much blood coming out of your head?
Yeah.
I guess that it's not a reason, it's why he passed out, I guess.
Yeah.
All of those factors.
Blood loss. Like you can beat him to death and he won't quit. And that's what made the double turn work. Like, wow, this guy, even though he lost, you have to respect him. And here's a really cool tie-in to a match a few years before. And Shawn Fuster informed me of this. I never thought about it. I never put it together. But a couple of years before, Bret Hart in another all-time great WrestleMania match, Bret Hart, Roddy Piper, Intercontinental title, WrestleMania 8, Hoosier Dome, 92, I think. And near the end, Piper is becoming a full-blown heel. He's bending the rules. He's starting to break the rules. And, thank you. Toy Beast. Just want to give a shout out to Toy Beast. Laptop is slow tonight, but thank you for the super chat. That will be going to the Sick Children's Hospital in London. Thank you very much. Yeah. So Roddy Piper, you guys remember when he gets the ring bell? I think the ref took a bump, and Piper gets the ring bell, and he's about to cross the line. He's about to go too far and hit Bret with the ring bell. And I know a lot about ring bells. Yeah, they work. Especially on the larynx. Yeah, on dragons. They're dragon slayers. So he's about to go too far, and the crowd starts booing him. Don't do it, Roddy. We love you. And Roddy doesn't. He drops the ring bell. He's like, you're right. And he goes for the clean win, the sleeper, which Bret wiggles out of and pins him. So because Roddy didn't cross the line, he lost the belt. Bret has this amazing way of, like, he knows his matches better than anybody. He takes great pride in his matches, and he knows the little details. And I never put this together, but those two matches, watch them back to back, they're connected. Bret Austin is the sequel to Bret Piper. The roles are reversed. Bret has the bell in the Austin match, and he crosses the line. Piper wouldn't. And that's why he turns heel. That's what made the double, because Bret had that same moment of truth, and he took, I love Bret, and he did the right thing. That Dastardly Austin deserved it. But in terms of the storyline, he did the thing that Piper wouldn't do and lost. So because Bret did it, it's almost like he learned. It's like, well, I'm going to win by any means necessary. And he won, but at the cost of his integrity.
I would bring this up too. And this is amazing. This is the old man in me when guys knew how to work instead of just do stuff. Piper and Bret were such good at actually working that they had an entire audience cheering to not use a weapon. Yeah. Can you imagine how good of a worker you would have to be today to get a live audience and people for cheering to have a wrestling match with no weapons? Now we bring out a stationary object, and people are chanting for tables. The table doesn't care about you. The table's an object. It's not alive. It's not dead. But for them to get that, put it down and actually try to win the thing right. And again, Piper going over in defeat still because he's maintained his integrity. He's kept his character, and he went away after that. So it made sense, of course. And he would rather lose with honor than win without honor.
Right.
That was the story he told. And it passes the torch to Bret, saying we're going away from some crazy brawling. Maybe some better technical wrestlers are going to be in charge for a little bit.
That is a great point. It really shows you what a meat grinder the world has become of, wrestling, and ECW has made its mark. And then now it's all about bring the shopping cart full of weapons.
Yeah.
Well, and you could almost make the argument that that kind of launched Bret on a whole line of things, because he goes through 9 where he has the belt and loses it to Yokozuna, and then Hogan turns around and gets it, and then you get into 10 where he has to fight his brother who's the heel, and he loses to him, but he does get the belt back. And there's like this whole story arc that rolls with him all the way through to 13.
Continuity.
Just real continuity through his character. And and Bret never ever thinking anything other than he's the hero. And
that's a great point.
And even when he comes out of 13, he still thinks he's the good guy, because Austin is just this depraved, trashy dude. And so, that's it. It's some, I don't know if that was intended, to be that way, but I think maybe there's a part of Bret that might have intended for it to be that way.
That's a great point. I've never thought of it that way. Going to the Montreal screw job for a minute, and we're not going to be on that for long, but Bret's been accused of taking himself too seriously sometimes in relation to that whole thing. What's the big deal? What's the big deal? I can't lose in Canada, whatever. If he was truly making this masterpiece of a career and everything was actually connected, that matches were sequels to other big matches, because the house shows, they were just, you churn them out, you forget about them. What's the big deal? But the big matches, if they were connected, then this guy in his mind, right or wrong, is painting a masterpiece before our eyes that we can 20 years later watch in succession like a great series of movies and go, wow, these all work together so well. Piper Bret and Bret Austin are years apart, but they go so perfectly together. And no one saw that. Very few people see that. But it works, and hopefully more people will know about that. So I'm just trying to walk a mile in Bret's shoes. He's got this thing laid out, and he's put a lot of thought into it. I think a lot more thought than most wrestlers do in terms of their career as a full painting. And so when they say, no, we're changing the finish, we're doing something else, the reason that doesn't work for him so bad isn't because, I don't think, because of a huge ego, not totally, but because, no, you don't understand how I've laid this all out. It's like a master storyteller and being told, we got to change this, like telling Tolkien, we got to change this on the fly. You got to kill Gandalf off 30 minutes into Return of the King. Well, no, that's not how it's supposed to go. Yeah, you can call him a big baby for not, rolling with the punches, but if you know what he was working on, sure, the guy's going to he's going to put up a fuss that he's not getting to do this the way he spent hundreds of hours planning it.
Yeah, I think that's great the way you painted Bret's story, because I think he's one of the few wrestlers that I think inside and outside the ring, he's the same person. And it's like he has, I think, the longest longevity of a single character that just works every year. It's like he doesn't have to reinvent himself every year. Sure, he did a heel turn, but it's Bret Hart, hard worker, and he loved the business. And I think that's what broke his heart from that match, was like he didn't want to let his fans down. He didn't want to let himself down. Yeah.
And plus just the lack of trust. I mean, it's like, if you didn't trust me after all these years, that I wouldn't do that, because it was all about the belt, right? Bringing the belt on the competition. Like, if you could have trusted anyone, you could have trusted him, especially when they basically canned him. He wasn't leaving by his own accord. They were telling him leave and then saying, but we don't trust you. So I love that, I hate what happened to him, but as the years have gone by, people seem to be empathizing a little bit more with Bret Hart rather than the other crew and saying, maybe that was kind of crappy what happened to him. But we haven't heard from Rob for your, thank you for, patiently waiting, but what's your favorite WrestleMania match moment, Rob?
You know what? I got to agree. Mine is WrestleMania 13 for many reasons, because big fan in the 80s and then kind of, early 90s as well, then dropped off a bit. That 1997, that WrestleMania brought me back. And if you think about it, it was such a important WrestleMania because I think Bret Hart represented the end of an era of the 80s, early 90s. And then after WrestleMania 13,
he was his decades.
It was, I think, one of the last WrestleMania. Right. It was like, I don't think they had steel railings after that. They were painted black. I think that was one of the last WrestleManias with the blue, white, and red ropes. WrestleMania 14 was they switched to red, black, and gray, and they started painting the thing. So it was like a real segue into a different era. It closed out a chapter, and I think it got new fans from the brutality of it. I mean, the blood, something we didn't see. You know, we saw guys blade in the 80s or whatever, but that blood was like unreal. And the fact that, you know, they had the enforcer referee was Ken Shamrock, that was bringing in a little bit more of the more heat, as in the violence part of it. Not saying that's what, you know, made me like it, but it was just an end of an era, I think, in the beginning of what really blew up, you know, to make wrestling a whole name again with you know, and, you know, there was Captain Lou was in the crowd there, you know, but I just think if you look at the way the design was, the colors, you know, Bret switching over, the Austin, you know, era coming in and attitude, I think it was such a pivotal point in wrestling just in general. And it's got to be one of the matches that I could remember almost everything from, just for so many reasons. So
I thought when you said WrestleMania 13, you were going to say Macho versus Crush. Yeah. Can't get to all the comments here, but I want to give a shout out to some of the people in the live chat. Destro 319, Gaz, Dale, Sanford, Toy Beast, Master, Heavenly, Vlogger, They Gone, good to see you. Toy Connections, Ken, how you doing? Rhett and Ronaldo, thanks all for leaving a comment there. Did we get everybody's favorite WrestleMania match? Did I miss anyone?
I'll jump in.
Oh, go for it, Bob. Sorry.
Yeah. First of all my favorite WrestleMania matches and moments are brought to you by Dr. Pepper Zero Sugar. Has the same great taste of regular Dr. Pepper cream soda. And if you go to coca-cola.com/Dr. Pepper Zero Sugar, type in a promo code Bob Squad, and absolutely nothing happens. It's a waste of time. They would like me to stop.
What are you, some kind of comedian?
Also, before I forget too, sorry, Michael of Toy Habits. I'm a big fan. I'm happily surprised that you are in this. I was watching your newest video earlier today.
Oh, thanks.
This is where the big boys play, Bob.
Well, you can't say it's the granddaddy of them all, but it is.
Notice the adjective "play." Isn't that what Nash said after called it the adjective?
Yeah, the adjective.
It's hard to always pick one, but one of them that really stands out. 32 years ago today, at WrestleMania 6, also in Toronto. I think you know what I'm going to talk about. The Hart Foundation defeated the Bolsheviks.
Oh,
that's a great match.
It was a great
quick.
match.
It's quick.
In about record time, Bret and Anvil hit Boris Zukov with the cardiac event. And that was a big moment.
Not allowed to say heart attack anymore. Is that the newest?
That's you. That's not on me. That's your channel, man. I don't want to.
I said heart, HART.
You could do it. You can do what you will with that. If we're just talking matches and not moments, because those are different things.
Funny man, yeah.
I'm a stand-up comedian, by the way. Yeah, who cares?
No, he actually is. I want to give a shout out to people who think I'm joking when I'm calling him some kind of comedian. He actually is.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Follow him on Instagram, Twitter. Go check him out live.
It hasn't been a very newsworthy week for comedians anyway, so you might as well.
You've been slapped yet?
No.
Good.
My day will come, but
oh god.
No, but actually, no, it was weird. The day after I did a show, I got headbutted by Coolio. Kind of. Why? It's amazing how that happened.
I think that was staged.
How'd you walk through the valley of the shadow, brother?
Oh my God! Busta Rhymes tried to break my neck. I mean, we could just it's a little deep. It doesn't matter. As far as this match, and this is not a great wrestling match, but it doesn't matter. 31 years ago today, Hogan and Warrior Mania 6.
Oh, love it, man.
The reason is, obviously there's nostalgia for it. There's nostalgia for a lot of these things with us. But I remember how big it felt. Like, it felt like there was a million people there and not
Yeah.
67,000,
I remember that, yeah.
whatever it was.
Yeah.
I remember it felt like there was 1 million people there, and they were really fighting for the championship of the world. And I want to emphasize world.
Well,
They
both
weren't
belts.
fighting. Yeah.
This
yeah.
one too.
It didn't feel like they were fighting to be the champion of Raw or SmackDown. It felt like they were being the champion of the world. And it felt so huge. And I was aware of, I was a Northeastern kid, so I was aware of Sting and Flair and what was going on there, but this felt like the world, and it felt so big. And I remember the division I came to, because again, no internet, so you waited till Saturday morning Superstars to find out who won the Sunday pay-per-view. And I remember kids like in the 4th grade knew that I had a couple of friends over, but to watch the pay-per-view, and they were like, who won, and it was half of them all cheered and half of them all got sad when I said the Warrior won. It was just the importance of it, and how monumentous was it for Hulk Hogan to be pinned clean at that time. It was not fathomable. It felt like I rewound that VHS over and over, and it never felt real. So to be on the edge of our seats back and forth, even when I think Warrior had Hogan in a bear hug. Hogan likes to fight out of the bear hugs. That's probably, by the way, so you can still see his face while he's selling, and he stays in all the photographs for the record.
The Anaconda device doesn't work for me, brother.
Because Andre could
Cover up my face.
Andre could have grabbed a nerve hold or whatever, but no, it's keep me in the pictures if we're gonna. Okay. So that would be a match that I do go back and rewatch all the time, and it's funny. It's 2 Warrior matches because back to back with Mania 6 and 7 would be the one. I hope I didn't step on anybody else's, but they do tend to sync up to each other in my mind because of the hugeness of it. Those two always wrap themselves together for me.
As a kid, it was the first time. And I guess I was 13, but still kind of half paying attention to stuff at the time. I wasn't quite aged out, but I was not able to pay too much attention. And again, we were in that Southern wrestling, we were watching Sting and Flair head toward their collision at the Great American Bash that year. But man, it's the first time I remember a good guy versus a good guy. And with these huge followings and some crazy promos leading up to that during that whole thing, the whole load the rocket ship with the fuel, Hogan, get ready to launch away, Hogan, it
was really tough, wasn't it? Because from what I remember, I loved both of them.
Yep.
Warrior was the new Hogan almost, right? So I remember everyone loved Hogan, but those two, you're absolutely right. It was the 2 big good guys, and it's like your heart almost got torn out. It's like, well, I want
Optimus versus Rodimus.
Exactly. It was like I want Warrior to win too. It was crazy.
And it never happened too. You never had a face against a face. Like it didn't happen that often. So it was very splitting, right?
And if it did happen, it was like in the Boston Garden. It was a little house show thing. It wasn't a big deal. It was Tito Santana versus Ricky Steamboat or something like that. It wasn't colossal. And that's on my list, definitely up there, Warrior Hogan, because it doesn't feel like a wrestling match to me. It feels like a comic book super crossover. It's Batman versus Superman. It shouldn't happen. It's Anakin versus Obi-Wan. Like, this is unnatural, weird. Why is this happening? And then the match, like Hogan Andre, actually lived up to it. There was no horrible botches. I mean, they tried to do it again years later at Halloween Havoc, and that didn't work for the most part. Warrior was injured, which was a major thing, and they were both a little older. But that match just is perfection. Every time I watch it, it's like it's just the irresistible force meeting the immovable object. It's like, even though I know who's going to win, it's still such an amazing match to watch these 2 forces of nature collide and no one giving an inch. And then one guy sells a bit, and the other guy takes control, and then it flips. And it's just, Warrior did win, but I never felt in my mind it was like a huge win. I always felt like he won by a hair. just by because Hogan kicks out right
Hogan
at
kicks out on 3, doesn't he? Yeah.
Kicks out
right,
3.
and it's one of the best kick out on 3 kickouts I've ever seen. Like he really powered him out, and Warrior sold. Like, to his credit, for all the flack that Warrior gets for being a terrible worker and selfish and stuff. Check that match out. When Hogan kicks out, Warrior sells it. I mean, if Warrior didn't want to fly off of him on the 3 count, he wouldn't. Guy was 260 pounds himself. You know, he could have cradled Hogan and you're staying down for 10 if I want. So he was on board with, yeah, I should beat you by a hair, because there's always money in the rematch. And the fact that they didn't do the rematch the year later, to this day, I'm shaking my head like, why didn't you do the rematch? Warrior defending against Hogan and have him drop it. You know, I doubt that Hogan would lose clean 2 years in a row, but have Hogan win it back and maybe have the rubber match the following year. But it just sounds, from Bruce Pritchard's podcasts, Vince had no interest whatsoever in ever doing it again. He didn't get the specialness of it that we all still feel all these years later. Vince was making it and going, who cares? Whatever.
Stanton, I might go the other way, Michael. I might argue against doing the rematch. Because, I mean, then we know
take
Hogan.
The specialness away. Yeah.
Take the specialness away.
There's that too.
And there's so many other factors would have been going on, because really it was only 2 Manias later that Hogan would, you know, he beat Sid in Mania 8, right, Indiana, and Hogan goes away for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So also keeping in mind that summer of 91, Warrior is fired, quits, whatever, who cares what story it is. Warrior goes away for a bit, and then he's back for 6, 7, 8 months in 92, and he's gone away. So I think the other thing would be when, and if they did do it, would the build-up have been interrupted? Would Warrior and Hulk go away right after this big match? And then there's Bret Hart and maybe Shawn and, you know, Taker's on the rise, but then they're like, oh, are we not the main event guys? And it would look like it does today when all the big stars and main event wrestlers are never here. So maybe it was just, as they say in that Shawn Michaels tribute song, they used to always play, "Leave the memories alone."
That was Ric Flair. Shawn was "Tell Me a Lie."
That was 95. Yeah.
Bob, you also mentioned something, and I'm sorry, I keep talking over it because I just get so excited about this stuff because it's just taking me back. But
do the thing.
You mentioned how big everything looked in that match, like just the crowd and everything else, and
remember the sign? They were the giant Hogan sign when Warrior's on the ropes at the beginning, and he's looking at this impossibly huge for 1990 sign of Hulk Hogan staring right at him. Incredible shot.
They were in the Sky Dome? Was the Sky Dome a thing at that point?
Yep, Sky Dome.
Here's the thing. Even in their heyday, even in the time when WCW was beating WWF in the mid 90s or whatever, or the late 90s, they never got that kind of production down. They never learned how to make something look and feel as big as the WWF did in those days. And they were packing out stadiums and they were packing out, but they just never figured out how to do the really big feeling of what WWF had done. And especially that, you mentioned the sign that those people had. I mean, I wonder if that's something production gave them, if that's something they made on their own. And then there was someone with the stand up that was out there. And
that was Dick Ebersol.
Was it with the Hulkamania written on the sheet? You know, there was the Hulkamania on it. Remember that? It just.
I would add to that too, Steve. Throughout the night, and I think that was one of the last 4-hour WrestleManias. Throughout the night, there's constant Hogan and Warrior merchandise. If it's not red and yellow, then it's bright neon colored. I remember those guys in tuxedos in the first or second row with Warrior face paint, and they would always pan to these 3 or 4 guys in tuxedos and Warrior face paint. I don't know why. Doesn't make any sense. Who cares? They stand out. I mean, see them, I noticed them several times. So when they do, and now that, we're all getting on in a few years that they do these revisionist history documentaries with WWE, and you see Hulkster, because he's the only one, unfortunately, around to tell his story, and we know his word's reliable. Hogan will always say, everybody in Toronto Skydome, they were all chanting Hogan. They were all, looking at me when Warrior was celebrating with the fireworks. And I got, I've watched this thing a million times since I was 10. No, they weren't. Watch the entire show and that match. It's 50-50 is how it was. He's a liar.
I think another element to that bout that made it larger than life was the title versus title too. Like that to me, like the Intercontinental Championship back then, I think to me was larger than the World Championship, and it felt more important. I saw it a lot more, so it was in my face a lot more. But just having those two titles pitted together with just two larger than life people was outstanding.
Do you remember
made it special? Yeah.
There was the longest time I remember in the 80s when Hogan was the champion forever. And he never lost. And he also never came out. There was like Saturday Night Main Event, you might see him.
Yeah.
But any of the shows, he was never there. So it's just like Hogan was always the champion.
He was the new Andre. He was a special attraction.
Yeah, and it's funny when I would go to a house show, my naivety as a kid, I would think it would be like Saturday night's Main Event, but no, it wasn't. But I still had a good time.
Aren't house shows hilarious? I went to my first one. I remember I was like, like Michael said, I think the biggest attraction was like Tito Santana. No offense to Tito fans out there, but I was like, really? Like, where's like Junkyard Dog and all this?
Oh yeah, I think I saw Big Boss Man in a kingdom.
SD Jones.
Barry Windham.
So I'm going to throw my favorite match out there. I agree with Mark here. Savage versus Steamboat. I loved wrestling up until WrestleMania 3, but I never watched it for a good match. I've never watched a match that made me exhausted. They were fun fights like you'd see in a movie or a TV show, like an A-Team episode. Just fun fights. Watching Savage and Steamboat was something different. It was exhausting. It was just no match had ever made me emotionally invested, and all the near falls and just the ballet. It was so perfect. No botches, no calling things on the fly, which can be good, but this was just, it was a movie scene that played out right in front of your eyes. And when Steamboat won, by cheating, by underhanded tactics, I was exhausted. Like, it felt like a roller coaster thrill ride that I had never experienced. And Hogan and Andre was fantastic too, but it wasn't a great worked match. It was a bunch of great moments tied together, but Savage Steamboat was just this fluid, beautiful thing. And it was after that I realized, because the Bulldogs were just as good workers, and Bret of the Hart Foundation, but they also had good moments. They didn't have like amazing matches. Like the Bulldogs would have those incredible smash you in the face and blast your head off with their moves moments. And then after Savage Steamboat, that's when I started going, well, when's the next great worked match? And Savage versus Honky Tonk on Saturday Night's Main Event is up there. Savage versus Bret on Saturday Night's Main Event. Bret, Austin, Bret. Like, that's when I started to realize, okay, you got your two different types of matches. You've got your like Hogan match, Warrior match, and you got your Savage match. You got your Bret match. You've got your Austin match. So I got to say, still to this day, Savage Steamboat, not just for still a great match, but for what it introduced to WrestleMania, that you could actually be a great worker and steal the show, instead of being 7 feet tall or 300 pounds and being super flashy and that being the only way to steal the show.
Is that the one where Macho Man put the bell in his throat?
That was leading up to that. Yeah, he crushed. He crushed Steamboat's larynx, and they did those promos where Steamboat had to learn how to speak again.
That was that was hilarious.
He's like,
excuse me.
But he was going to go for it again, but George the Animal Steele.
That's right.
Took him down.
Yeah, let's not forget George Steele was out there doing the Lord's work.
Yeah.
That's the funny thing about that match. Steamboat doesn't really win clean. And we we turn a blind eye to it, especially back then before it was cool to cheer the heel. We all turned a blind eye to it because Savage deserved it. Like, he did so much worse than that. So it's like, well, you had that one coming.
Well, when you watch Hogan, Hogan matches, it's the same way.
He's
Hogan
a heel.
would wrestle like a heel.
Yeah.
And his style never really changed from heel to babyface back to heel. Same thing with Steve Austin. You mentioned the WrestleMania 13. Austin didn't change after WrestleMania. He continued to do what he did. It was just embracing what the people were wanting and that sort of thing. And so but Steamboat, the perennial babyface, like never a bad bone in his body.
Right.
To do that. You're right. Like, we give him a pass though, because you're right. Savage deserved it. Savage has been brutally evil up to that point.
And what really clinches that he needed help to win that night, like, he was a beaten man. He lost the belt 2 months later. So we know, many of us know why he lost the belt. He wanted to go home and be with his newborn baby. But in the wrestling world, he lost the belt because he barely got it. Because, I don't know, he's injured. He's hurt. He's not 100%. He scraped by the Macho Man by the skin of his teeth. He got the belt by hook or by crook, lived by the sword, died by the sword. And then he lost it to the Honky Tonk Man of all people 2 months later. It's like, that really shows you how much he needed that help. Come on, baby. It's the longest reigning. He's not the greatest.
Well, anytime you go from heel to face, the idea. Anytime you go from heel to face, the idea is always the heel still is who he is, or she, but they do the heel things to other heels now. They do the bad things they used to do to people who are also bad. Jake Roberts did an awesome job of this. And Randy Savage, shortly after the Honky Tonk Steamboat match, Randy Savage ends up doing an awesome job of that. Because have you noticed a thread here that anytime something is done awesome, Savage or Bret Hart are involved? Is there? Am I great? It's just maybe they're the greatest of all time.
Makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, but
I really think a Bret Hart tribute stream, which can be done at any time, would be outstanding. And have you done one of those, Michael? I forget.
A Bret Hart tribute? I need to.
Bret Hart matches and moments, or I don't know. Well, if you do, I'd love to be a part. I have a lot to say about that.
I would love to do that. It's just
there's a lot.
I always gravitate more to the guys who haven't gotten their just due. So I did a Backlund tribute not too long ago because there just wasn't a Backlund tribute. And after reading his book, I decided there needs to be. And I guess I'll do one. And I picked that song, Only Living Boy in New York, after hearing it for the first time last year. It was in a movie I was watching.
That's by Garfunkel and the other guy?
Yeah, I don't remember what the other guy's name was.
Well, I'll say this, Michael, you mentioned Steamboat barely winning and losing, in the terms of the wrestling story arc. I don't know that there was anyone else in the WWF at the time. Maybe you could make the case for Bret or somebody, but I really don't know. Maybe Dynamite Kid, but there are very few people who could have had that match with Savage outside of Steamboat. When you go and watch some of Steamboat's, just a couple of years later, his trilogy with Flair, that is just, it's some amazing stuff those guys do. And in Steamboat, Flair puts Steamboat over as one of the greatest of all time whenever you talk to Flair, because Flair said Steamboat didn't have to talk to you. He just absolutely knew what was coming next. You'd hook him on something and he would fight his way out of it. He knew he just was so instinctive in what he did. And so I think that played to Savage's strengths as someone who liked to work out the match step by step. And so that helped just that whole thing come to fruition. And Steamboat has said that at the end of it, he said he went to the back and just collapsed. Like he said, and he found out that Savage had basically done the same thing, that they had literally given everything they had by the time that match was over. And it's there, like, at that point. And Michael, you said that this was kind of the first match that you ever watched where you begin to notice the working rate of matches. To the Southern guys, it was like, oh, this is a wrestling match. That was kind of, quite frankly, the Southern style of wrestling in a lot of ways we're doing. So
yeah, you guys are lucky you grew up on that. Up in Canada, we didn't have any of that. We didn't get NWA until 89, 90.
Right.
So that was news to us.
Yeah.
I think the bow on that match, and you can tell that they're physically exhausted, is the pin with the small package. Totally unexpected.
On a
And
body slam.
no, it's
He-
not. Yeah, you don't have.
He goes
the
for a
big-
body slam.
Yeah, and Steamboat hooks them, and he just hooks the one leg,
Yeah.
and that's really it. To add, actually, Michael, to your point, the exhaustion, the little cart with Elizabeth and Savage. Savage is at this point. Savage has been in the business a decade, probably, right?
Yeah.
He knows more than well enough that it's time to pose and yada 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 and sell and let everyone see your face. He is doubled over, and I think she's holding the belt, or he's barely holding it, as the garbage pelts him or whatever, because he just.
Oh,
That's right, he's not holding the belt. He just lost
The
it.
belt was gone.
The
It was
belt's my
gone.
bad. But the garbage is pelting him. Sorry, and
Yeah.
and he can't even stand up and show his face or show his outrage or probably yell that George Steele ripped him up. He can't do any of that. He's doubled over as the garbage just pelts him. So yeah, that's
And that was perfect way to leave the ring because, I mean, this is before he became the greatest of all time. He deserved some comeuppance for what he did to Savage and also for what he did to Tito. When I started watching wrestling just as Savage was taking the belt from Tito with the cold rolled steel, and I love Tito Santana. And that was not just revenge for Steamboat, but it was revenge for Tito because, like, you know, you're saying who could have hung with Savage that night? Tito could have too. You know, he had some amazing matches, great Latin fire. So him burying his face was very important. You know, it wasn't just about getting pinned and losing the belt. Now you've got to really feel that loss, because that's one of the best ways to get your revenge on a heel is to take his belt. Well, if the heel goes, I don't care, well, that win is hollow. But if the heel is crying, if he's hiding it and his woman is consoling him, it's okay, honey, it's okay. Yes.
It's a walk of shame.
It's a ride. But that's what it was, a ride of shame. And it was a perfect, like, Savage was just a master in the ring and out of the ring.
Guys, refresh my memory, because I can walk you through the big WrestleManias from 1 till about 10 or 11 with no problem. Where between WrestleMania 3 and 4, though, did the face turn come for Savage? Or was there just some natural thing where people began to cheer? Was there an action that he took to solidify him as a good guy?
He was going after Honky's Intercontinental belt.
Okay. All right.
So he was literally in the backstage. He's in the backstage congratulating Honky on winning the belt, I think. So Honky wins the belt and he's like, yeah, good job. And then since Savage went, they were like, well, who's going to chase him? And they were like, just do Savage, flip him and do Savage. So there was like a build on Saturday night's main event where the slap happened to Elizabeth, and they had Hogan come down and endorse Macho. Not that he needed it. Should have been the other way around. Yeah. But that's how they like rehabilitated Savage's. And I think the reason it worked is because Savage ate that loss so bad at WrestleMania. He put on such an amazing match, and then he ate it. Like he didn't cry, or he literally cried, but he didn't like no sell the loss. He just took it. He took it and he suffered. And it's like, okay, we got our pound of flesh. Yeah, you tried to murder the guy, but Steamboat got his pound of flesh.
That's the thing.
Let's move on.
Is by the time he did that, he was ready, or the crowd was ready to cheer for him. By the time he starts chasing Honky Tonk, and that I think
cool.
that's the other thing that makes a good heel. You know, there comes a moment when you just, there's apparently a time where it works to turn that heel face, because people are like, they begin to notice this guy's not bad at what he does. He's just a jerk, or he's just, we would like to be able to cheer for this guy. And so that's the other thing I love about wrestling is like especially in those old days, all the bad guy had to do was come out there and hit another bad guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you're like, yes, he's good.
Don't forget Elizabeth too. No one really wanted to boo Elizabeth with Randy.
He was halfway there already.
Yeah.
It's like, change your ways.
You just kind of wanted him to be a bit nicer to her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Liz,
Yeah.
Liz was never really a bad, I don't get into all that. But to take, because we're talking about Bret's WrestleManias kind of being a sequel to one another, if I may, at WrestleMania 8, Randy Savage beats Ric Flair.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a whole mess with that match with the blood, and then Ric Flair kisses Elizabeth, and it's gross and weird, and all this stuff. But
That might make you a little bit upset.
But the thing is, these two are going to wrestle each other around the country and probably in Europe several times. So this feud isn't over, even though the good guy just won the championship from the bad guy. So they had to keep the heat. I don't know, if I had my druthers, I wouldn't do it the day of WrestleMania, do it a week later, but whatever. Savage wins the thing, and there's an interview later, and they never show this interview, but of course, Mean Gene Okerlund, and Savage has the belt, and he's limping, he's still selling his leg, and he gives Elizabeth the belt. And Michael, you know what I'm talking about?
I know. Thank you for bringing it up. Yeah. It's one of the best promos of WrestleMania
Gives her
ever.
the belt, and I absolutely love it. He goes, "This is yours. Take it and go." Yeah, and then he's ripping off his own shirt.
Tears that nice shirt that he wears in the match. It's gone. It's not a cheap shirt. It's like it's part of that gold and black beautiful ensemble he wore for the whole match. He tears it up.
It is already ruined because it's stained with Ric Flair's blood anyway. So I mean, you might want to say, "Hey, listen, if we're gonna wreck it on camera, right?"
Yeah, he tears it off, and he's nuts.
He's nuts, and he's screaming, he's clawing at his own face. And I don't know all the words. I can't parrot. Basically, he says, "Ric Flair, I just took a piece of you. Yeah, I know what it means. And I took a piece of you. Yeah. Next time, I'm taking all of you. And now I want to see a rematch, even though the good guy won, because I want to see Savage's version of killing the rest of Ric Flair." My mind's blown. Great stuff.
When has that ever been done where the face gets his revenge by taking the belt from the heel and then says, "I'm not done. Not enough.
He touched Elizabeth.
I'm not done." Like it's never been done, and Macho pulls it off perfectly. Like, yeah, you just won the belt, and now you're chasing the former champion. That's weird. But
so if they come to my town, I'm buying that ticket because in my head I'm like, now Savage is going to kill him this time.
Yeah. Like the belt was. I guess it kind of devalued the belt a bit, where he's saying the belt doesn't matter. But speaking of belt not mattering, I got to also bring up WrestleMania 7. If we couldn't get Warrior Hogan 2, well, we got a great consolation prize. We got Warrior Savage, and that's another mind-blowing match. Like the ladder match, it really set the pace for the next generation of wrestling, for good or bad, kicking out of finishers repeatedly, where Warrior kicks out of the flying elbow 5 times. Savage kicks out, or he doesn't kick out of the shoulder block. He just takes the shoulder block a couple times, but does kick out of the gorilla press and splash, which was superhuman too. So it's just amazing to me that 2 of the best WrestleMania matches ever, Savage is in them.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. And I mean, I could go on forever about Bret and Shawn and the Iron Man and how it doesn't get the love it should. I already mentioned the Bolsheviks match. I'm glad I got that in there.
Yeah. I love that match, man, because I was a big Hart Foundation fan, and they were floundering. They split, and then they got back together, and I'm like, oh, come on. Is this their chance? No, they're getting jobbed out. And is this their chance? No, not again. So they were just floundering. And then WrestleMania 6, they destroy the Bolsheviks in a minute. I'm like, oh, yes. Probably for time constraints, but it made them look like monsters.
Also, think about how well Boris and Nikolai were moving at that time, how well Nikolai ever moved. How good of a match do you think Hart Foundation and Bolsheviks would have actually been? Like, why expose it? Just jump it. There were 14 matches on a 4-hour show, and that's back when they did a great job of not having 13 packages, and you could actually just have a bunch of matches and it doesn't really feel like 4 hours. So, and good God, what a long weekend we are in for. Holy Moses.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I think I'm going to clean the house during it. I might be a different person by the time it's done with.
Yeah.
I might get married, have kids by the time the pre-show's over. I don't know what my weekend looks like.
Even at 31, I mean, we were at the stadium for 7 hours. I mean, that was long. I mean, it's different being there live, but than just sitting in your home, where you could do other stuff. But
go to the bathroom, get something to eat.
But my moment was I actually met Daniel Bryan's mother in the concession line.
Wow.
She turned to me and she's like, "Oh, are you here to watch the match?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm Daniel Bryan's mother." I'm like, "Can I take a picture with you?" That's funny.
Was 31 at Levi's Stadium? Was that 31? Was that Sting and Triple H?
Yeah, Sting versus Triple H.
That's another big moment.
My favorite match, though. I was a huge Rollins fan, but Rollins versus Orton was a fantastic match. Rollins missing the Phoenix Splash, landing on his feet, goes for the stomp, and then Orton just pulls off the best RKO I've ever seen in my life.
Incredible. Yeah. That's like in a different way, but Hogan slamming Andre, that doesn't look like it should be possible. That's a video game move, and it was perfection. It reminds me of Shelton's springboard into the super kick, just like, oh, you don't know the margin of error, and they just pull it off perfectly.
That's where Rollins goes for the curb stomp and Randy
gets launched up,
launches him.
Yeah.
It felt like it was in slow motion.
Yes.
It happened. And I was watching it unfold and I was like, this is not happening. And it happens and my guy loses. Or, I'm like, this can't happen. And then flash forward to the main event. Great match between Lesnar and Reigns. But I was totally not expecting the ending on that one. I actually forgot that Rollins had the Money in the Bank contract because I was like, okay, he lost. All right, he's not. He can't come out again. And then when that music hit, everything erupted. The stadium went crazy. I was like, what the heck is going on? And that seemed to happen so fast. And then he steals the belt. He runs away, pulls off the heist of the century. All these fireworks go off, and it's just amazing just being in that experience with everybody watching at the same time.
Dale has a good comment here. Near falls, they're all over the place, but Savage Steamboat was the one that really trained us to invest in these near falls. So it didn't have to be a full match. Sometimes a match wasn't all that memorable, but it had a memorable moment, and that's a great example. I'll throw one of my most memorable moments. It wasn't part of the actual match, it was post-match stuff. Savage and Elizabeth reuniting, probably for me still to this day the most emotional WrestleMania moment of, again, long-term storytelling. The Kingdom of the Madness cracking in half and reconciling with the lovely Miss Elizabeth, and then going away, not wearing out his welcome and spoiling it immediately with another feud, going away to be a commentator and being retired and the goodbye, because he was retired.
But there was that shot of that person just crying as she comes up and hugs him. Oh,
in the rain hat.
That was a great moment. That was such a great moment.
Bobby's commentary was amazing too. That's sickening.
I think her shoes are too tight.
That was definitely on my list too.
That led to that SummerSlam, though, the match made in heaven and the match made in hell, where Randy and Elizabeth got married, and then of course the wedding gift afterward, with the snake.
Oh yeah, and the heel turn, Jake's heel turn.
That led to him and Jake, and the Cobra spot.
Those things were so important. Like you had so we have the career-ending match at Mania 7. Savage, so it means something. So we see Savage and Liz, and they were only apart for 2 years, by the way. That's how much we cared.
Yeah,
they were only apart for 2 years, and then we do the wedding 5 months later at SummerSlam. So WrestleMania meant something. It's not like nowadays you main event of WrestleMania, you might not be on the next pay-per-view. You might just be, eating a grilled chicken in the back of some stadium in Cleveland somewhere. Like it doesn't mean as much. They made it at WrestleMania now. Where's Asuka? I don't know. I don't want to go into everybody and all the modern stuff, but I'm just saying, like, it meant something. And that's why, for me, a moment, it's a little more modern. The match was what it was, but Lesnar beating The Undertaker at WrestleMania 30, that stuck with me. Like, that was a silence, like a deafening silence.
That was Bruno losing the belt to Koloff. It was white heat. They say in wrestling, red heat is good. You're really riling them up. When they go quiet, run for your life. That's white heat, and that's not the heat you want to get.
I don't even know that it was heat. I think it was just utter shock and disbelief, and then it turned to, for a lot of fans, I think, disgust,
depression.
Yeah, like this.
It sucked.
This was supposed to be Taker's legacy, this undefeated streak.
Because there's no coming back from it. You can hurt a guy and he can come back and take the belt, get his revenge. But you take the streak. Where's the redemption? How does he get back at Lesnar for breaking his streak? Nothing. There is none.
You just don't. That's one of those weird things where I remember passionately hating it for months, and then I kind of came out of it. I felt like it elevated Paul Heyman to Bobby Heenan's status in a way.
The reaction on the sidelines.
Yeah. Because think about, Bobby did so much of the work for Hogan Andre leading up to it, as Paul Heyman did more or less all the work leading up to that match. And I really felt like when I was watching that, and I was hosting it was the first event on the network, a little historical fact, and I was hosting it off my laptop on a projector at a comedy club in New York City. And I remember the silence, and everyone, and these are 30, screaming wrestling fans, and then the silence. And I remember going home on the subway thinking that this must be what it felt like, because I watched shortly after, started watching wrestling shortly after WrestleMania 30. This must be what it felt like to see Hogan and Andre get slammed and not believe it, because I saw that and I didn't believe it. And that's why I put that moment as like the number 2 WrestleMania moment in my brain.
Mm-hmm. Rob, you got any other favorite WrestleMania moments?
Oh man, what about King Kong Bundy versus SD Jones?
5
special delivery.
Well, that's a big one, because back when we were little, we weren't used to seeing squash matches that literally took, was it 13 seconds or something? You obliterated him in a WrestleMania match.
It's arguably the greatest wrestling match.
Like, what a waste of a segment. I don't know.
Yeah, obliterated him.
No, it's not a waste. I think Bundy, it made Bundy so dominant over a guy, not a top baby face, but a big, physically big baby face. And it put Bundy in a position of dominance to move him on up the ladder for later. And he was in the cage next year with Hogan. And then,
true.
Yeah. It did something for him.
That was a great match.
Jay, do you have any other favorite WrestleMania matches? I just want to throw out that the Hall of Fame is coming up in about 15 minutes. So I think we'll be wrapping it up in a bit, because we want to go and we want to watch the Steiner brothers. Yeah, I want to see Scott Steiner with an open mic.
Oddly enough, some of my favorite moments are early 80s stuff, and it's just the celebrity stuff with like Cyndi Lauper, and I just couldn't believe, because I'm a huge music guy, so watching big music celebrities like that come out with wrestlers was just like crazy. And then, and I can't remember which video Cyndi did where all the wrestlers, Piper was in it, Captain Lou. It was just like
girls just want to have fun.
Girls just
was that it? Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was just blowing my mind. I was like, oh my God, like this is
they were
huge.
also in the I think
genre.
they were also in the Goonies video.
Yes.
Right.
The video she did for Goonies, they were in it.
That stuff to me is just extremely cool, how they were bringing outside celebrities. And I guess even now, and I don't watch wrestling now clearly, but I guess I love Jackass, so I guess like Johnny Knoxville has been fighting and stuff like that. Like I just think stuff like that's really cool.
Yeah.
Apparently no one else does, but that's okay.
I want to throw out a couple of Piper moments, because Piper's another one of my all-time favorites. The retirement match, that was emotional too. Speaking of emotionality, the retirement, because I thought we were saying goodbye to Piper forever, and I had just started liking him. He was such a dastardly villain, Hulk Hogan's arch nemesis, and he just came back and was a good guy. And then I'm retiring. I'm going, and before, he wasn't doing movies yet, but he was acting amazing on his way out. I got 4 fights left. He took it all so seriously, and it just broke my heart that he was leaving. So him beating Adonis, it was so bittersweet. He had that amazing street fight with Goldust, I think at WrestleMania, was it 12 or 13?
12.
11.
Was it 12?
The backlog.
12 in Anaheim, yeah.
At 12. Yeah, that thing was incredible. The backlot Hollywood backlot brawl. It was like basically
That was
watching the They Live fight.
Yeah. With a Bronco
Exactly.
chase in the middle.
That's right.
That was really his last hurrah in terms of WrestleMania. Although he'd show up, later on, smacking Hogan in the head with.
Does that technically mean that O.J. Simpson has had a WrestleMania moment? Because he's they used the footage and he was in the car.
Hall of Fame
so
worthy?
Did they use the actual footage from the
I
chase?
think they did.
I always thought they recreated it, but if they used the
I think
actual
they
footage,
recreated it. I don't think.
Okay, I hope they recreated it then. I hope so.
Yeah, I do too.
Like, I know they got a white Bronco for Piper
Right.
to drive around in, but
Yeah.
I was always under the impression they cut to the footage. But I hope I'm wrong, and I'm fine with that.
yeah. So to take it into the modern era, because there's a lot of old school nostalgic memories, but they seem to be few and far between for me. Really memorable moments of recent years. But do you guys have any? Like the one that comes to my mind is the Boneyard match, which was the highlight of the COVID WrestleMania. Which is so awkward to watch. But that was
I
a
think when the
saving
Hardys
grace.
returned a couple years ago.
That was big. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I don't
I
know.
like when the
event.
Hardys returned and won the titles.
Yeah, I don't know if this counts as more recent, but the Shawn Michaels Ric Flair.
Oh, I'm
retirement.
sorry, I love you.
And
Mhm.
that
up
was
there.
listen as again Southern wrestling. Ric Flair is indeed a wrestling god, as he would eventually say in TNA. But to see that and to sit there that night, I was by myself watching it at my house that night, and I was like, wow, I just witnessed the end of an era. Something that I didn't know that I'd ever get a chance to see. This is actually pretty powerful. And then they did him a great send off that unfortunately Rick ruined by going to TNA and doing what he did in TNA. But woo, none of my business. But then that led into Shawn and Undertaker at WrestleMania 25,
Yep.
which led to the Michaels retirement match at 26, which led to
That's another great moment. Before, sorry, just 1 second.
yeah.
Michael slapping Taker
Yes.
on his
Yep.
way out of his
Yep.
career is just
Yep.
the perfect way to end a career.
But see,
Defiant
that
to
led
the
to
end.
Triple H and Taker the next year in Atlanta, which led to the Hell in the Cell the next year, which really was a great send off for all those guys.
Yeah.
And would have been a great way to just kind of put the period on all of that stuff and even let Undertaker go. But obviously they continued on. But I just that through line from Ric Flair's retirement through that Hell in the Cell at 28 was just a great story arc from Shawn and Triple H and Undertaker to me.
Yeah, great series. And Jake here says, ask Roddy about Mr. T. They buried the hatchet in Roddy's, I believe, last WrestleMania appearance. It was a backstage thing, but they had the main event players all there. Wonderful, Mr. Wonderful, Paul Orndorff, Hogan, T, Piper, and they buried the hatchet.
Well,
and I love that they only had like 10 seconds to do anything, but Piper was like, it pained him, but he shook T.
Well, Piper said on his podcast that, the night before at the Hall of Fame, because T had spoken, he was just really impressed with the way that, Mr. T introduced his son and talked about what his son had done. And Piper saw him for the first time as a father and a human, and not just some guy that had invaded wrestling years prior. And it just gave him newfound respect. So he actually went up to him and said, maybe we can go get a Coke sometime. And he said, and T looked at him and said, I like chicken. And
Bob, you got any modern moments?
Yeah, I guess two of them I'll smash together. But I'd be remiss if I didn't jump at the chance to sneak in the two female wrestling main events in 2019 and last year. Of course, the Becky, Ronda, Charlotte one in 2019, and on a show so long I went into the next day, which is kind of funny. But that one, the history of that, and that, unfortunately, it was such a long show, and Kofi Kingston and Daniel Bryan for me sucked the emotion out of me already, so I couldn't really follow it. But it was so late. But it was near me. I lived in New York City at the time. I didn't go to it. God help me. Those guys got home at 4 a.m. because of the trains. Long story. But Sasha Banks and God help me, Bianca Belair last year too. the two of them, especially Bianca, like breaking down as the bell rang.
Yeah.
Kind of that got me too, because the moment and Sasha's like almost like yelling at Bianca, like hold it together, and you're making me worse, and they had and yes, and again I know it's 2 nights, so which one's the main event? Is Sunday really the main event? Is the one with Roman Reigns automatically the main event? I don't know, and it's a whole fight I'm not interested in having, but for two of them to be able to say two women of color main evented the main event of WrestleMania, and to watch the real emotion there before they had a very good match.
Yeah.
And again, I think only sometimes the aftermath of booking WrestleMania, because I think Sasha was really gone for a bit. Sometimes that just kind of hurts the history of these things a bit, because they just kind of make you forget. But yeah, I want to mention those two. That's all.
I was gonna say, why are you getting emotional? You know, like don't get all emotional and cry before your match. But I guess I'm colorblind. I didn't even realize that that's what the circumstance was, and so in that case, that is a pretty epic moment right there.
Yeah, I love the way they handled this. Michael Cole, he just said it once, and if you missed it, you missed it. If you caught it, you caught it. But he mentioned it once at the beginning, shortly around the time the bell rang. I haven't watched it back.
Yeah, good for them.
But they all, you should mention it. But then they're like, and here we go, and now it's on. Yeah. And they both, Bianca's a hell of an athlete. Oh, my God,
Bianca's
she's a star.
fantastic.
So Sasha's got charisma up the wazoo, and she's vicious when she wants to be. And I'm just like, let me have it. I don't care whose gender is what. You guys, if you're kicking butt, you're kicking butt. Do it.
That's right.
Do it.
That's right. Well, that's greatest WrestleMania matches and moments. I think we'll wrap this up now and gear up for the Hall of Fame, and it should be interesting. I'm sure Big Papa Pump will behave himself. He's now that his nephew, for people who don't know, Braun Breaker is Bronson Rex Steiner, aka Rex Steiner, son of Rick Steiner. It's weird. He's the son of Rick, but he looks and sounds just like Scott. And wrestles just like Scott. So I'm sure because Braun is getting a featured role there, and they're probably planning on doing big things with him. Scott knows it's probably best if I behave and endorse and just, get over my stuff and play along to not mess up the nephew's career. Because the nephew is clearly a huge fan of his uncle. He's his father's son, but he's like a little clone, not even a little clone. He's just a clone of Scott Steiner. It's surreal watching him.
He'll be a big star too. And I actually do hope for no incidents. Maybe I'm getting boring as I get older, but I don't like Hall of Fame drama. The guy who attacked Bret 4 or 5 years ago, whenever it was. I shouldn't have even brought that up. I'm sorry, because now it ruins the vibe. But either way, I'm just like, it's the Hall. Get in, get out. Our wrestling weekend, if you're still a fan, is going to be long enough. We don't need to start it off exhausted.
Yeah.
Let's just say thank you, hugs, goodbye, move on.
Totally. Scott Steiner, hopefully. Bombs aplenty. Cue the theme song, the sirens. Woo! Give me the mic.
There's a 33 and 33% chance he's going to say something.
You think we're going to hear Steiner math tonight?
I don't know. It all depends. I think I think they have time limits now, because the last year they had time limits. I call it the Hillbilly Jim rule. They have time limits now.
Wow. So, as long as he asks someone to do him an egg, I'm satisfied. Do me an egg. I'm hungry. Hopefully Samoa Joe isn't in the crowd, because that would he might say something inappropriate. But that's our WrestleMania chat, guys. Man, thanks everyone so much for joining tonight on the chat.
What a blast.
Yeah, it was fun.
Some plugs. Time to do some plugs. Michael Toy Habits on YouTube. Check him out.
Thank you.
Jay Bartlett's channel is called Jay Bartlett. Search for it. You're not where's that guy? The paranormal exorcist.
Yeah, there's an exorcist named Jay Bartlett. I'm not him. I'm the toy Jay Bartlett. So don't get confused.
Look for the toy reviews.
There you go.
Mr. Funny Man, you're a comedian. How do people find out when your shows are?
Yeah, find me at Bob Hansen Jokes, Twitter and Instagram, and Bob Squad is the name of my channel. Don't Google Bob Hansen. He was a serial killer in Alaska, murdered prostitutes.
Good night.
Yeah, so don't Google me at all. It's not me. Find me Bob Squad on YouTube, and I just made it public. I just saved my new son Bob G.I. Joe adventure story. The World's Least Dangerous Man is up right now. So please check it out.
Those are great. Check them out on the Bob Squad.
Thank you for letting me plug stuff and letting me chat with you guys, dude.
My pleasure, man. Rob, 3D Vintage Toys on Facebook, Instagram. Got some cool stuff in St. Jacobs. Worth the drive down to St. Jacobs. Rob's upon a bit of a lag, I think. And awesome, Steve Glosson, Geek Out Loud, still going on.
Yeah, whenever we can. It happens about every 6 weeks or sporadically, and I step in and wave and just celebrate what we love. So check it out, Geek Out Loud, wherever you find podcasts.
Awesome. And everyone in the live chat, thanks for joining us. It's been a blast. Enjoy WrestleMania weekend. Thank God Almighty. Thank Macho Man Randy Savage that they're splitting it into 2 nights so that we don't have to have those ungodly 7-hour shows like Michael had to attend. So enjoy the Hall of Fame tonight. We got night 1 tomorrow, night 2 on Sunday. Have a blast, everyone. Take care of yourselves. See you later. Yeah. Take care.